The Cthulhu Mythos. The emergence of H.P. Lovecraft from a struggling writer in amateur journalism to an author of canonical status in world literature is nothing short of incredible, perhaps unparalleled by any other writer in Western literature. From movies to video games to music, Lovecraft has inspired generations of entertainment. Howard Phillips Lovecraft was born on August 20th, 1890, in Providence, Rhode Island. His father, a traveling salesman, took ill in 1893 and died 5 years later of syphilis. As a result, his mother returned to her family home, where Lovecraft's upbringing was largely undertaken by his grandfather, industrialist Whipple Van Buren Phillips. In his youth, Lovecraft read voraciously in the Arabian Nights and in Greco-Roman mythology, and began to write prose and verse at the age of 6. Poor health troubled Lovecraft as a child, and he attended grammar school only sporadically. The death of Whipple Phillips in 1904 plunged the family into an economic decline, forcing Lovecraft and his mother to move out of their large home. A nervous breakdown in 1908 compelled Lovecraft to drop out of high school, and he spent the next few years living as a hermit, reading compulsively. In 1914, he discovered the amateur journalism movement and spent several years writing essays and poetry. Following the tragic death of his mother in 1921, Lovecraft was encouraged by his friends to submit some of his stories to the newly founded pulp magazine Weird Tales. He quickly became a fixture in the magazine, and in 1924, Lovecraft was offered a position as editor. Turning down the job offer due to the financial risk that came with it, Lovecraft instead married Russian immigrant Sonia Half-Greens and moved to New York. The 2 years Lovecraft lived in New York were among his worst, as the multiple culture of the city brought out his lifelong xenophobia. Unable to find work, Lovecraft moved back to his native Providence in 1926, financially struggling and newly divorced. Over the next 10 years, he produced the work for which he is best known, including such tales as At the Mountains of Madness, The Case of Charles Dexter Ward, The Dunwich Horror, as well as his most famous work, The Call of Cthulhu. Lovecraft's stories had a shared universe that became known as the Cthulhu Mythos, named after the author's most famous character. Lovecraft encouraged other authors to expand the universe, and the mythos was soon filled with many stories from the likes of Robert Bloch, the author of Psycho, Robert E. Howard, the creator of Conan the Barbarian, and August Derleth, founder of Arkham House Publishing Company. Even with volumes of material, Lovecraft was unable to find a book publisher and was only able to secure a meager income through appearing in pulp magazines. In his later years, Lovecraft was plagued with poor health, and he succumbed to intestine cancer on March 15, 1937. He was 46. In the decades following his death, Lovecraft became known as the father of modern horror, not merely for his tales, but for the immense number of letters he wrote to dozens of correspondents, young and old, many of whom revered him as a titan in the fields of fantasy and horror literature. Fiction that emphasized the cosmic horror of the unknown became known as the subgenre Lovecraftian horror. His works inspired the likes of artist H.T. Geiger, who designed the creature from the Alien film series, director Sam Raimi and his movie The Evil Dead, writer Mike Mignola, the creator of Hellboy, and even author Stephen King. In The Call of Cthulhu, Lovecraft shows a world where humans are not alone and presents them as weak, which can furthermore emphasize his view on the world. Lovecraft was an expert at giving exquisite details to the point of provoking goosebumps and describing everything that demanded an explanation. The narrator, as well as the reader, knew that only death awaited them. Also, the narrator did not seem to be afraid of death, since death was a far better fate than facing the evil that was Cthulhu. Lovecraft shows examples of his philosophies towards humanity in the story's characters. They are depicted as being far weaker and less intelligent than the creatures who stalk them. The story paints a picture that humanity is little more than ants filled with despair as they struggle in an uncaring universe. Humans are ignorant to the evil that threatens them and what they can do to prevent it. Many of Lovecraft's characters become mad when exposed to such evils. To him, madness was simply a natural reaction to the experience of true horror. The critical acceptance of H.P. Lovecraft as an important American writer did not come easily. Much of his struggle came from a rejection of his pulp writings and reinforced by the fact that Lovecraft published nothing in book form during his lifetime. Over time, readers realized that the unique contributions Lovecraft made to the horror genre. His original approach to dark fantasy revitalized the genre and influenced every important new writer in the field. His fictions transcended the limits of the popular genre to offer a provocative and significant view of modern human beings' predicament in such a vast and unknown universe.